ATA for correcting my family when they kept misgendering my partner during my birthday dinner. I was holding a birthday cake with 31 candles when my mother looked directly at Jordan and said, she really should consider wearing something more appropriate to family dinners. The thing is, Jordan uses they/them pronouns. My mother knew this. Everyone at that table knew this. And that was the 19th time someone had misgendered my partner in less than 2 hours. I set down the cake, and my hands were shaking so badly that the candles flickered like they might go out. My father cleared his throat in that way he does when he wants someone to back down, and I realized in that moment that I had a choice to make. I could let it slide like I had 18 times before that evening, smile through dessert, and pretend everything was fine. Or I could finally stand up and watch my entire family turn against me. What I didn't know then was that this dinner would end with police involvement, a restraining order, and my mother's carefully constructed social reputation crumbling in less than 72 hours. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without context. I met Jordan 3 years ago at a photography exhibit downtown. They were standing in front of a black and white portrait series, and I watched them stare at one particular image for almost 15 minutes. I'm not usually the type to approach strangers, but something about the way they tilted their head, the small smile playing at their lips, made me walk over. We talked for 2 hours straight. Jordan was brilliant, funny, thoughtful in ways that made me reconsider things I thought I knew about myself. They worked as a graphic designer for a marketing firm and volunteered teaching art to kids on weekends. When they told me their pronouns were they/them that first night, I stumbled over the grammar for maybe 10 minutes before my brain adjusted. It wasn't hard. It was just different from what I was used to, and different doesn't mean difficult. We moved in together after 8 months, and I'd never been happier. Jordan made me coffee every morning, left sticky notes with terrible puns on the bathroom mirror, and had this way of listening that made me feel like everything I said actually mattered. My family was a different story entirely. I come from old money, the kind where appearances matter more than authenticity, where Sunday dinners are mandatory and deviation from tradition is treated like personal betrayal. My mother, Patricia, ran the household like a military operation. My father, Richard, was a corporate lawyer who measured success in billable hours and country club memberships. My sister Catherine was 2 years younger, married to a banker, pregnant with her second child. My brother Daniel was the golden child, a surgeon engaged to another surgeon, both of them exactly the kind of power couple my parents had always wanted their children to become. Then there was me, the middle child, the one who went to art school instead of law school, who worked as a freelance writer instead of joining the family firm, who brought home a non-binary partner instead of a nice girl from an appropriate family. I'd been preparing them for months before I introduced Jordan. I sent articles, I explained pronouns, I thought I was being thorough and patient. My mother responded to every email with, "We'll discuss this in person, dear." We never did. The first dinner I brought Jordan to was 6 months into our relationship, a Sunday in April when the cherry blossoms were just starting to bloom. I remember because Jordan wore a vintage blazer covered in embroidered flowers, and they looked so beautiful it made my chest ache. I'd coached them on my family dynamics during the drive over, warned them about my mother's pointed questions and my father's silence that somehow communicated more than words. What I didn't prepare for was the systematic erasure. My mother greeted us at the door with, "Welcome, dear, and who is this lovely young lady?" I corrected her immediately, gently. "Mom, this is Jordan. They use they/them pronouns, remember?" She smiled that tight smile she reserves for things that displease her and said, "Of course, how silly of me," and then spent the entire dinner referring to Jordan as she and her and Alex's girlfriend. Every single time, I corrected her. Every single time, she apologized. Every single time, she did it again within 5 minutes. By dessert, I'd stopped correcting her. Jordan squeezed my hand under the table, and I felt like the worst partner in the world. I told myself it would get better. I told myself they just needed time to adjust, that this was new for them, that they were trying. But dinner after dinner, month after month, nothing changed. My sister Catherine was the worst about it, actually. She'd say things like, "I just don't understand why she can't use normal pronouns," while Jordan was sitting right there. When I'd explain that they/them are normal pronouns, literally in the dictionary, she'd sigh and say, "You know what I mean, Alex. Don't be difficult." My brother Daniel mostly stayed silent, but his fiancée Melissa would occasionally chime in with well-meaning comments about how confusing it all was, how it was just so hard to remember. How couldn't Jordan just understand that older generations struggle with these things? Jordan never complained. They'd smile politely, change the subject, hold my hand in the car on the way home while I apologized for my family's behavior. "It's okay," they'd say, but I could see how it wasn't okay. I could see how they'd started dreading family dinners, how they'd grow quiet and withdrawn the day before we had to see my parents. The breaking point was my birthday, 31 years old, and my mother insisted on throwing me a dinner party at their house. "Family tradition," she said, when I suggested we skip it this year. I tried to get out of it. I really did. I told her Jordan and I had plans, that we were thinking of taking a trip, that I wanted something low-key. She responded with that particular brand of maternal guilt that she'd perfected over decades. "I've thrown you a birthday dinner every year since you were born, Alexander. Are you really going to break my heart like this? So I agreed, but I laid down ground rules. I called her 3 days before, had a 30-minute conversation where I explicitly stated that Jordan's pronouns were non-negotiable, that if anyone couldn't respect that basic courtesy, we wouldn't be attending. She assured me everyone would be respectful. She said she'd spoken to the family. She promised it would be different this time. I actually believed her. We arrived at 6:30 on a Saturday evening in October. The house looked exactly like it always did. Manicured lawn, tasteful decorations, expensive cars lining the circular driveway. Jordan had agonized over what to wear, finally settling on dark slacks and a cream-colored button-up shirt that made their eyes look impossibly green. I kissed them in the car before we went in and said, "If it gets bad, we leave, I promise." They nodded, but I could see the resignation in their expression. We'd made that promise before. I'd never kept it. My mother answered the door in a navy cocktail dress, pearls at her throat, smile fixed in place. "Happy birthday, darling," she said, kissing my cheek. Then she turned to Jordan. "And hello again, dear. Don't you look lovely? That shirt is very flattering on you. Very feminine." Jordan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I felt my stomach drop. We weren't even inside yet. The living room was full of family. Catherine and her husband Thomas, with their 4-year-old daughter Olivia. Daniel and Melissa, both still in their scrubs from morning shifts. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Jeffrey, my mother's sister and brother-in-law, who I saw maybe twice a year. A few family friends I barely recognized. Everyone turned when we entered, and I watched the calculation happen in real time. Smiles, greetings, and then the immediate default to the wrong pronouns. "She's here. Doesn't she look nice? How is she doing?" I started correcting people immediately. "They," I said. Jordan uses they/them pronouns. My mother laughed, this tinkling, dismissive laugh. "Oh, Alex, we know, but it's just so unnatural. Surely she understands." Jordan's hand found mine, and I could feel them trembling. "We can leave," I whispered. They shook their head. "It's your birthday," they whispered back. "Let's just get through dinner." Getting through dinner felt like running a marathon through broken glass. We sat at the formal dining table, Jordan next to me, Catherine across from us with that smug look she gets when she thinks she's right about something. The meal was catered, some expensive Italian place my mother loved, and between courses, the misgendering was relentless. "Could someone pass her the salt? Has she tried the risotto? She should really have some of the wine, it's a wonderful vintage." Each time I corrected them. Each time I was met with eye rolls, sighs, or worse, my mother's patient explanation that they were doing their best, and I was being unnecessarily sensitive. My father hadn't said a word the entire evening, just sat at the head of the table eating methodically, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't read. Around 7:30, things escalated. Catherine, several glasses of wine deep, leaned forward and said, "You know, Alex, I've been reading about this. It's a mental illness. There are studies. She needs therapy, not encouragement." The table went silent. I felt Jordan go rigid beside me. I opened my mouth to respond, but Daniel beat me to it. "Catherine's not wrong," he said, his surgeon voice all clinical detachment. "Gender dysphoria is in the DSM-5. There are treatments." Melissa nodded enthusiastically. "I actually had a patient once who went through this phase. She eventually realized it was just confusion and went back to her normal identity. Maybe Jordan just needs time to work through whatever this is." I stood up so fast, my chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "Jordan is not confused," I said, and my voice came out louder than I intended. "Jordan is not sick. Jordan is not going through a phase, and if you cannot show them the most basic level of respect, we are leaving right now." My mother set down her wine glass with deliberate care. "Sit down, Alexander. You're making a scene." I didn't sit down. "I told you," I said, looking directly at her. "I explicitly told you that this was non-negotiable. You promised everyone would be respectful." She waved a hand dismissively. "We are being respectful. We've allowed her into our home, haven't we? We've been nothing but welcoming. You're the one being disrespectful, demanding that we change our entire way of speaking to accommodate her delusions." I felt something inside me snap. It was like watching a building demolition. The way years of trying to please them, trying to bridge the gap between my life and their expectations, just collapsed into rubble. "Her name is Jordan," I said, very quietly. "They use they/them pronouns. And if you cannot manage that basic courtesy, you will never see me again." My father finally spoke. "Don't be dramatic, Alex." His voice was tired, like I was a client making unreasonable demands. "Your mother is right. We've been more than accommodating. If you can't appreciate that, perhaps you should examine your own behavior." Jordan tugged gently on my sleeve. "Alex, let's just go." But I couldn't move. I stood there staring at these people who had raised me, who I'd spent 31 years trying to make proud, and I realized I didn't recognize any of them. "You're really going to choose this hill to die on?" Catherine asked, gesturing vaguely at Jordan. "Her feelings over your own family?" That was when I laughed. Actually laughed, this sharp, bitter sound that surprised me. "They're not asking for anything extraordinary. They're asking you to use the right words when you talk to and about them. That's it. That's literally all they've ever asked. And you can't even do that. My Aunt Linda, who'd been silent until now, decided to weigh in. In my day, we didn't have all these made-up pronouns. You were a boy or a girl, and that was that. This is just attention-seeking behavior. I looked at Jordan, and I saw something I'd never seen before. They were crying. Silently, tears just streaming down their face while they sat completely still, like they'd trained themselves not to react, not to give these people the satisfaction. And I realized that I'd been bringing the person I loved into this hostile environment for almost 3 years, subjecting them to this degradation, this systematic denial of their identity, because I couldn't stand up to my family, because I kept thinking it would get better, because I was afraid of being cut off, of losing the only family I'd ever known. I'd been choosing wrong every single time. I reached for Jordan's hand. "We're leaving." My mother stood up. "If you walk out that door, there will be consequences, Alexander." I almost asked what consequences, but then I remembered the trust fund I'd never touched, the inheritance that was supposedly waiting for me, all the financial strings attached to being a dutiful son. "I don't care," I said. And I meant it. We made it to the front door before my mother played her final card. "I've spoken to Attorney General Michael Foster," she said, her voice carrying down the hallway. "He agrees that what you're doing to yourself is concerning. Your father and I are prepared to take legal action if necessary." I turned around slowly. "Legal action for what?" She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "We're concerned about your mental state, living with someone who's clearly disturbed, enabling her delusions. We think you might need help, Alex. Involuntary help, if it comes to that." The implication hung in the air like poison. She was threatening to have me committed, to use my father's legal connections and their money to paint me as mentally unstable because I was dating someone non-binary. Jordan's hand tightened around mine. "You can't be serious," I said. My father stood in the dining room doorway. "We're very serious. We love you, son. But we can't stand by and watch you destroy your life. If you won't accept help voluntarily, we'll find other ways." I felt dizzy, like the floor was tilting beneath me. These were my parents. These were the people who'd raised me, taught me to ride a bike, helped me with homework, celebrated my achievements, and they were threatening to have me institutionalized because I refused to misgender my partner. We left. I drove to our apartment in complete silence while Jordan cried in the passenger seat. When we got home, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for probably an hour. Jordan eventually came and sat next to me. "I'm sorry," they whispered. "This is my fault." I looked at them, at this incredible person who'd done nothing wrong except exist authentically, and felt rage like I'd never experienced before. "No," I said. "This is their fault, and I'm done protecting them." That night, I started documenting everything. I went through my phone and found every text message where my mother had referred to Jordan with the wrong pronouns despite corrections. I made a list of every dinner, every event, every instance of deliberate misgendering. I wrote down my mother's threat about involuntary commitment, her claim about speaking to the Attorney General, every detail I could remember. Jordan watched me work until 3 a.m. and finally asked, "What are you doing?" I looked up at them. "Building a case," I said. "They want to play games with lawyers and threats? Fine, but I'm not going to let them win." Monday morning, I called Dr. Michael Green, a therapist Jordan had been seeing for the past year. I asked if he'd be willing to speak with me, and he agreed to a joint session that afternoon. Dr. Green was in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of calm demeanor that probably took decades to cultivate. He listened while I explained what had happened at the dinner, the escalating harassment, the threat of involuntary commitment. Then he asked Jordan how they felt. Jordan talked for almost 30 minutes straight, describing the emotional toll of being systematically misgendered, the way it made them feel erased and invisible, the depression that had been creeping in, the nightmares they'd been having about my family. I hadn't known about the nightmares. Dr. Green took notes, and then he asked me a question I wasn't expecting. "Alex, do you understand that what your family is doing constitutes emotional abuse?" I sat there, the word abuse hanging in the air. I'd thought of them as difficult, as conservative, as stuck in their ways. "But abuse?" Dr. Green continued. "Creating a hostile environment, deliberately using incorrect pronouns despite repeated correction, threatening legal action to coerce compliance. These are patterns of psychological manipulation and control. This isn't just about being old-fashioned or struggling to adapt. This is deliberate harm." He offered to write a formal letter documenting Jordan's mental health, affirming their gender identity, and stating professionally that they were absolutely not delusional or in need of any kind of intervention. He also suggested I consult with a lawyer about the commitment threat because he said, empty or not, that kind of threat is serious. I left his office with a 5-page letter on official letterhead, Jordan's hand in mine, and a new understanding of just how toxic my family situation had become. That week, I found a lawyer. Her name was Amanda Foster, no relation to the Attorney General my mother had name-dropped. Amanda specialized in family law and LGBTQ+ discrimination cases. I walked into her office with my documentation, Dr. Green's letter, and a recording I'd secretly made of the birthday dinner on my phone. I'd started recording after Catherine made the mental illness comment, capturing the next 20 minutes of escalating hostility. Amanda listened to the whole thing, her expression growing darker with each passing minute. When it finished, she looked at me across her desk. Your mother threatened to have you committed because you defended your partner's pronouns? I nodded. She leaned back in her chair. That's not just empty threat territory, that's actionable. The Attorney General claim is almost certainly false, by the way. I know Michael Foster. He wouldn't involve himself in a private family matter like this, and making claims about his support could constitute fraud or defamation. Amanda asked if I wanted to pursue legal action, and I hesitated. Part of me still hoped this could be resolved without lawyers and courtrooms. Amanda saw my hesitation and said something that changed my perspective entirely. Alex, your family is counting on you backing down. They're counting on you valuing their approval more than your own integrity. Every day you let this continue is another day they learn they can treat you and Jordan this way without consequences. She was right. I'd been backing down for 3 years. I'd been choosing their comfort over Jordan's dignity, over my own self-respect. I told Amanda I wanted to move forward. She started drafting a cease and desist letter, demanding they stop the harassment, stop making false claims about legal action, and either respect Jordan's identity or cease all contact with us. She also suggested I document any future contact, consider a restraining order if the harassment escalated, and be prepared for them to retaliate. People like your mother don't like losing control, Amanda said. She's going to push back, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. She wasn't wrong. The cease and desist letter was delivered to my parents' house on a Thursday morning. By noon, my phone was exploding. Missed calls from my mother, my father, Catherine, Daniel, my Aunt Linda, even family friends I barely knew. Text messages ranging from, "How could you do this to your own family?" to, "You ungrateful little shit." My mother's voicemail was particularly memorable. Her voice was shaking with rage as she said, "You have humiliated us, Alexander. You've embarrassed this family with your selfishness and your sick relationship. You are no longer welcome in this house. You are no longer our son, and we will make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." I saved every voicemail, every text message, every piece of evidence. That evening, my mother made good on her threat. She called my boss at the magazine I freelanced for, told them I was mentally unstable and in a dangerous relationship, suggested they reconsider working with me. My boss, thankfully, called me directly to ask what was happening. I explained the situation, offered to send him Dr. Green's letter and Amanda's documentation. He was shocked. "Your own mother called to sabotage your career?" he asked. "That's insane." I laughed bitterly. Welcome to my family. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. But my mother wasn't done. Over the next week, she launched what I can only describe as a smear campaign. She called my friends, telling them I was in a cult-like relationship and had become radicalized by transgender ideology. She posted on her social media carefully worded updates about worrying about her son's mental health and praying for his recovery from harmful influences. She reached out to extended family members, painting herself as the concerned mother and me as the rebellious son who'd turned his back on family values. Jordan was devastated. They'd already been struggling with depression, and watching my mother actively try to destroy my life was pushing them to a breaking point. I came home one evening to find them sitting in the dark, and when I turned on the lights, I saw they'd been crying for hours. "I can't do this anymore," they said. "I can't be the reason your family is tearing you apart." I sat down next to them and took their hands. "You're not the reason. Their bigotry is the reason. Their inability to show basic human decency is the reason. You are the person I love, and I'm not losing you because they can't handle your pronouns." But the pressure was incredible. My sister Catherine showed up at our apartment one night, pounding on the door at 11 p.m. When I answered, she was drunk and furious. "You've destroyed Mom!" she screamed. "She's crying every day because of you. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. You're killing them, Alex. And for what? For her?" She pointed at Jordan, who'd come to see what the commotion was. "They're not worth it. They're not worth our family." I started to close the door, but Catherine shoved her way inside. "I'm not leaving until you listen to reason." She stumbled into our living room, knocking over a lamp. "This is insane. You're throwing away everything for someone who can't even decide what they are. What kind of future do you think you have? You think she's going to give you kids? A normal life?" Jordan's face went white. I stepped between them. "Get out," I said. Catherine laughed. "Or what? You'll call the cops on your own sister? You've already destroyed this family. What's one more betrayal?" I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "I'm calling the police to report a trespasser who's refusing to leave my home," I said into the phone. Catherine's eyes went wide. "You're serious? You're actually doing this?" The dispatcher asked if I felt physically threatened. I looked at Catherine, drunk and stumbling, and said, "Yes." The police arrived within 8 minutes. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female, both professional and calm. They asked Catherine to leave. She started crying, playing the victim, telling them I was her brother and I was having a breakdown, and she was just trying to help. The female officer, whose name tag read J. Thompson, looked at me. "Is this your apartment, sir?" I nodded. Do you want her here? I shook my head. Then she needs to leave, Officer Thompson said firmly. Catherine left, but not before screaming that I'd regret this, that the whole family would make sure I paid for choosing that thing over them. Officer Thompson asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes. She took my statement, took Jordan's statement, documented the broken lamp and the harassment. Then she asked if we'd been having other problems with the family. I showed her my phone, the hundreds of messages, the voicemails. She exchanged a look with her partner. You might want to consider a restraining order, she said. This looks like harassment. I thanked her, and she left me her card. After they left, Jordan and I sat in silence. I'm so sorry, I finally said. Jordan shook their head. You have nothing to apologize for. I'm sorry you're going through this because of me. I pulled them close. Not because of you, because of them. The next morning, I met with Amanda again. I showed her the police report, the new messages, everything from Catherine's visit. Amanda's jaw tightened as she read through it. This is escalating, she said. We need to move quickly on that restraining order. Your family is spiraling, and I'm concerned about your safety and Jordan's. She filed the paperwork that afternoon. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, my mother found a new tactic. She called Adult Protective Services and reported that I was being financially exploited and emotionally abused by Jordan, that I was unable to make sound decisions, that I needed intervention. An investigator showed up at our apartment on a Monday morning. Her name was Rebecca Lawson, and she had the exhausted look of someone who'd seen too much. She explained why she was there, and I felt my heart sink. My mother was trying to paint Jordan as an abuser, trying to use the system against us. Rebecca asked if she could come in and talk to both of us. We agreed. For the next hour, she asked questions about our relationship, our finances, our living situation. She asked to see bank statements, proof that I was competent to manage my own affairs. She interviewed us separately, asking Jordan about their work, their background, their relationship with me. When she was done, she sat down at our kitchen table and sighed. Mr. Bennett, she said, I need to be honest with you. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of malicious reporting I've seen in my 15-year career. Rebecca explained that everything checked out, that there was zero evidence of exploitation or abuse, that in fact, the evidence suggested we had a healthy, equitable relationship. The person who called this in provided very specific claims that don't match reality, she said. I'm required to file a report, but I'll be noting that this appears to be a retaliatory false report. That can have legal consequences for the reporter. I asked if she could tell me who made the report. She hesitated, then said, It was your mother, Patricia Bennett. She claimed you'd given Jordan access to family trust funds, that you were isolating yourself from family, that you'd become violent and erratic. None of that appears to be true. I showed her my documentation, the texts, the voicemails, Amanda's letters, everything. Rebecca's expression grew darker as she reviewed it all. Have you considered pressing charges? She asked. This is harassment at minimum, possibly stalking, definitely filing a false report with a government agency. I told her about the restraining order hearing. She nodded. Good. I'll be submitting my report today, and I'm going to recommend that your mother be investigated for misuse of APS resources. What she's doing is not okay. The restraining order hearing was surreal. My parents showed up with their own lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged $500 an hour. My mother wore a conservative dress and pearls, playing the role of concerned parent. My father sat stoically beside her. Amanda presented our evidence systematically. The recording from the birthday dinner, the threatening voicemails, the texts, Catherine's forced entry and harassment, the false APS report, Dr. Green's professional assessment, Officer Thompson's police report. The judge, an older woman named Justice Helen Kowalski, listened to everything with an expression that grew increasingly stern. When my mother's lawyer tried to argue that this was just a family disagreement, that concerned parents shouldn't be punished for loving their son, Justice Kowalski cut him off. Counselor, she said, her voice sharp, I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the petitioner. This goes far beyond familial concern. The respondents have engaged in systematic harassment, made false reports to government agencies, and issued threats of illegal commitment. The fact that they're related to the petitioner doesn't excuse this behavior. My mother started crying, these delicate, performative tears. Your Honor, I just want my son back. He's been manipulated by this person he's living with. I'm afraid for his safety. Justice Kowalski looked at her coldly. Mrs. Bennett, I've seen the documentation from Dr. Michael Green, a licensed therapist with 20 years of experience. I've seen the statement from APS investigator Rebecca Lawson. I've listened to the recording from the birthday dinner where you and your family systematically and deliberately used incorrect pronouns for your son's partner despite repeated corrections. This is not concern. This is control. She granted the restraining order. My mother and father were prohibited from contacting me or Jordan directly or through third parties. They were required to stay at least 500 feet away from our residence and workplace. The order was valid for 1 year, renewable if the harassment continued. My mother stood up, furious. This is outrageous. He's our son. Justice Kowalski's gavel came down hard. And he's an adult who has the right to choose who is in his life. This hearing is adjourned. My parents left the courtroom, my mother weeping loudly, my father's face carved from stone. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But my mother had one more card to play, and it was nuclear. She went to the local newspaper, a conservative publication that loved stories about traditional values being undermined. She gave them an interview, painting herself as the victim of an adult child who'd been radicalized by transgender ideology and had turned on his loving family. She claimed we'd gotten a restraining order because Jordan had convinced me my family was abusive, that this was part of a pattern of isolation and control. She never mentioned the death threats, the false APS report, any of the actual abuse. The article ran on a Saturday, front page of the local section. "Local family torn apart by gender ideology," the headline read. I saw it when I went to get coffee that morning, and I felt physically sick. My mother had included our full names, Jordan's dead name buried in the article, our address indirectly referenced. By that afternoon, we were getting hate mail. By Sunday, someone had spray-painted slurs on our apartment building. Jordan stopped going to work. They were terrified, convinced that someone was going to hurt them. I was furious beyond words. I called Amanda, who called the newspaper, demanding a retraction and threatening a lawsuit for defamation and doxing. The newspaper's editor said they stood by their story, that my mother had a right to share her perspective, that they'd verified she was my mother and had a restraining order against her. Amanda started drafting a lawsuit, but I wanted more than legal action. I wanted the truth out there. I reached out to a reporter I knew, someone who worked for a progressive online publication with a large following. Her name was Diana Cho, and she'd covered LGBTQ+ issues extensively. I told her everything. I sent her the recording from the birthday dinner, the texts, the voicemails, Dr. Green's letter, the police reports, Rebecca Lawson's APS findings, the court documents from the restraining order hearing, everything. Diana listened to the birthday dinner recording, and I could hear her sharp intake of breath when my mother made the commitment threat. "Holy shit," she said. "Alex, this is horrifying. And you're okay with me publishing all of this?" I looked at Jordan, who nodded. "I want people to know the truth," I said. "I want them to see what she really is." Diana's article went live on a Wednesday morning. It was titled, "When Family Becomes the Enemy, One Man's Fight Against His Parents' Transphobic Harassment." She'd woven together the audio, the documentation, and interviews with Dr. Green and Rebecca Lawson, both of whom had agreed to speak on record. The article was devastating in its detail. It included transcripts from the birthday dinner recording, where you could literally read my mother's escalating cruelty. It included screenshots of the threatening texts. It quoted Dr. Green calling the situation one of the most clear-cut cases of familial psychological abuse he'd seen. It quoted Rebecca Lawson describing the APS report as vindictive and false. And it ended with Jordan's statement about what it feels like to have your identity systematically denied by people who claim to love your partner. Within hours, the article was everywhere. It got picked up by major LGBTQ+ publications, then by mainstream outlets. By that evening, it was trending on social media. People were furious. They were calling my mother's behavior disgusting, abusive, bigoted. They were sharing the article, adding their own stories of family rejection. My mother's carefully constructed social image imploded overnight. Her country club friends started distancing themselves. Her charity board asked her to step down. The local newspaper that had run her puff piece issued a groveling apology and published Diana's article in full. My father's law firm released a statement saying his personal views didn't reflect the firm's values. Catherine's social media was flooded with people calling her out for the mental illness comments in the recording. Daniel and Melissa both made their accounts private. Within 72 hours, my family had gone from respectable pillars of the community to social pariahs, and I felt nothing but relief. Amanda called me Thursday afternoon. "Your mother's lawyer contacted me," she said. "She wants to negotiate a settlement." I laughed. "A settlement for what?" Amanda's voice was dry. "She's worried you're going to sue for defamation, emotional distress, maybe even harassment. She's offering to make a public apology and pay damages if you'll agree not to pursue further legal action." I thought about it. About Jordan, who was finally sleeping through the night again. About the messages of support we'd been getting from strangers. About the fact that the truth was out there now, undeniable. "What do you think?" I asked Amanda. She was quiet for a moment. "I think you've already won," she said. "The court of public opinion has rendered its verdict. Anything else is just revenge." I talked to Jordan that night. We sat on our balcony, watching the sunset, and I asked them what they wanted. Jordan was quiet for a long time. Then they said, "I want them to leave us alone. I want to build a life that doesn't include them. I want to stop looking over my shoulder waiting for the next attack." I nodded. "No settlement," I told Amanda the next day. "No public apology, no money, no contact." Over the following months, I heard through mutual friends that she'd become bitter and isolated, convinced she was the victim of a cruel and ungrateful son. My father quietly divorced her 8 months later. I heard he moved to another state, started a new practice, and never mentioned me to his new colleagues. Catherine and Thomas got divorced, apparently over her drinking and the social fallout from the article. Daniel and Melissa postponed their wedding indefinitely. My family, such as it was, fell apart, and I felt nothing but peace. Jordan and I moved to a different city 3 months after the article dropped. We wanted a fresh start, somewhere we weren't known as those people from that article. Jordan started a new job at a design firm that had a reputation for being LGBTQ plus friendly. I kept freelancing, eventually getting enough steady work that I could afford therapy of my own to process everything that had happened. Dr. Green had been right. It was abuse. Years of it. And I'd been complicit by allowing it to continue. Therapy helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for my family's bigotry, but I was responsible for protecting Jordan and myself. I learned to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, to value my own dignity over others' approval. It was hard work, the kind that leaves you exhausted and raw, but it was worth it. A year after we moved, Jordan and I got married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and a few distant relatives who'd reached out after the article to express their support. No family from my side. Jordan's parents were there, loving and proud, using the right pronouns without hesitation. We danced to terrible music, ate too much cake, and I felt happier than I'd ever been in my parents' immaculate house with their perfect dinners and poisonous expectations. Sitting here now, 2 years after that birthday dinner, I sometimes wonder if I could have handled things differently. Maybe if I'd set firmer boundaries earlier, if I'd walked away the first time instead of the 19th, things wouldn't have escalated so dramatically. But I also know that some people will only learn when they face real consequences. My mother had years to change, years of gentle corrections and patient explanations. She chose not to. She chose her bigotry over her relationship with her son. That wasn't my choice. That was hers. Jordan is thriving now. They got promoted at work, started teaching art classes again, smile more easily. We have a life full of friends who respect us, work that fulfills us, a future we're building together. And when I think about that birthday dinner, about the moment I set down that cake and decided I was done, I don't regret it. I regret that it took me so long. I regret the years Jordan spent being hurt in the name of family peace. I regret not protecting them sooner. But I don't regret walking away. Some people will ask if it was worth it, losing my entire family over pronouns. And my answer is always the same. They're not pronouns. They're Jordan's identity. They're the words that affirm who Jordan is in the world. And if my family couldn't offer that basic respect, they weren't offering love. They were offering conditional acceptance based on conformity, and that's not love at all. Love doesn't demand you erase yourself to be worthy of it. The last time I heard from anyone in my family was 6 months ago. My Aunt Linda sent a card to my old address that got forwarded. Inside was a brief note saying she was sorry for how things had turned out, that she wished she'd spoken up during that dinner, that she hoped I was happy. I appreciated the sentiment, but I didn't respond. That chapter of my life is closed. I don't need their apologies or their regrets. I need what I have now, a partner who loves me, a life built on authenticity, and the hard-won knowledge that I'm capable of choosing what's right over what's easy. Jordan asked me once if I ever missed them, my family. I told them the truth. I miss the idea of them. I miss the family I thought I had, the parents I believed would eventually come around, the siblings I hoped would support me. But I don't miss the reality of who they were. I don't miss the constant anxiety, the walking on eggshells, the feeling of betraying Jordan every time I let a slur or misgendering slide. I don't miss compromising my integrity for people who saw my partner as less than human. Sometimes people recognize me from the article. It still circulates on social media, gets shared around Pride Month, or when there's news about LGBTQ plus rights. Strangers will approach me in coffee shops or at events and thank me for sharing my story. Some tell me their own stories of family rejection, of choosing authenticity over approval. Some are parents who read the article and realize they were making the same mistakes my mother made, who changed course before it was too late. Those conversations are hard but meaningful. If my family's cruelty could become a cautionary tale that helps even one other family avoid the same pain, maybe there's purpose in what we went through. Jordan says I'm too optimistic about that some people are just determined to be cruel. They're probably right. But I have to believe that most people, when confronted with the reality of their actions, can choose better. My family couldn't, or wouldn't. Either way, that's on them, not me. We're talking about adopting kids someday, Jordan and I. It's terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Jordan worries about bringing children into a world that might not accept them for who they are, might not accept us as parents. I worry about being a good father, about not repeating the conditional love I grew up with. But we also know we could offer a child something precious, a home where they're loved for exactly who they are, where their identity is celebrated, not tolerated, where respect isn't negotiable, where family means support, not control. I think about the kind of birthday dinners we'll have, full of acceptance and joy, and I know we'll be okay. Better than okay. We'll be the family we both deserved and never had. That's the real ending to this story, not the dramatic courtroom scene or the viral article or the public shaming of my bigoted mother. The real ending is Jordan and me, building something new from the ashes of what I left behind. It's quiet mornings and inside jokes and plans for the future. It's the absence of anxiety, of waiting for the next attack. It's freedom. So, am I the asshole for correcting my family when they kept misgendering my partner during my birthday dinner? No. I'm the asshole for not doing it sooner, more forcefully, more finally. I'm the asshole for every dinner before that one where I let it slide, where I prioritized their comfort over Jordan's humanity. But that night, when I set down the cake and chose love over fear, that night I finally got it right, and I'd make the same choice every single time. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.